Welcome to my channel. Subscribe to hear the latest story.
When I refused to let my golden child brother move into my apartment, my dad cornered me in my work parking lot and beat me. You will do as I say, or you're dead to the family. So I pressed charges and watched the whole family go nuclear. Hey, Reddit. So my dad physically assaulted me in my work parking lot because I wouldn't let my deadbeat brother crash at my place. Then I pressed charges and watched my entire family lose their minds. Buckle up because this story goes places. I'm 28 male, and I finally escaped my toxic family 3 years ago. My younger brother Nathan, 25 male, is the golden child who's never been held accountable for anything in his entire life. I'm talking next level favoritism that would make a behavioral psychologist write an entire dissertation. Growing up, I was the family workhorse. Started working at 15 busing tables at a local diner, saved every penny, maintained good grades because that's what responsible people do. Meanwhile, Nathan spent his teenage years gaming until 4 a.m. and treating our mom like a personal maid service. His dirty laundry would pile up in his room until it literally started growing things, and mom would still go in there and clean it all up while telling me I needed to be more understanding of his creative personality. The favoritism started early and never let up. When I was 12 and Nathan was 9, we both wanted bikes for our birthdays. I got a used one from a garage sale. Nathan got a brand new mountain bike from a sporting goods store that cost $400. When I pointed out the difference, my mom said I should be grateful I got anything at all. High school was when it really ramped up. I got my first job at 15 because I wanted money for things like going to movies or buying my own clothes. Nathan turned 15, and my dad actually talked him out of getting a job, saying he should enjoy being young. I had a midnight curfew through high school. Didn't matter if it was a weekend or a school night. Midnight was the cutoff. Break it by 20 minutes? Grounded for 2 weeks. Nathan? No curfew whatsoever. He'd roll in at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, and nobody said a word. When I was 16, I saved up $800 to buy a used Honda Civic, paid for it myself, paid for my own insurance. Nathan turned 16, and my parents bought him a 2-year-old Nissan Altima as a birthday gift. When I asked why I had to buy my own car but Nathan got one handed to him, my dad said, "You were already saving money for one anyway, so it worked out for everyone." The academic double standards were worse. I got grounded for a week for getting a B+ in chemistry. My dad gave me this lecture about not living up to my potential. Nathan failed 3 classes his senior year. 3. My parents hired him a private tutor at $50 an hour twice a week and blamed his teachers for not engaging him properly. When I was 19 and working full-time while taking community college classes, my parents started charging me $600 monthly rent. Their reasoning? I was an adult now and needed to learn responsibility. Cool, fine, makes sense. Except Nathan turned 19 2 years later and continued living completely rent-free. When I brought this up, my dad hit me with, "Every kid is different, and Nathan isn't ready for that kind of pressure yet." I paid rent for 3 straight years while living at home and going to community college. That's $21,600 total. Nathan lived rent-free for 25 years. I paid for my own community college classes while working 50-hour weeks. Saved up for 2 years, transferred to a state university, and graduated with a degree in accounting. Walked across that stage debt-free because I worked my tail off to avoid loans. My graduation gift? A $75 Amazon gift card and dinner at a chain restaurant where my dad spent the whole meal on his phone. My graduation day was actually pretty depressing. I'd worked for 6 years straight, maintaining good grades while pulling full work weeks, and managed to graduate without a single dollar of debt. My parents showed up 15 minutes late and sat in the back. Other families had signs and balloons. Mine brought nothing. At dinner, nobody asked about my job prospects or plans. Just good job and then immediately pivoting to talk about Nathan's future. The gift card came in a drugstore birthday card with neither of them having written anything inside except their names. It still had the activation receipt tucked inside from that morning. Nathan enrolled in college the next year. Failed out after 3 semesters because he spent more time partying than studying. My parents paid for every cent of it. Over $35,000 total. Tuition, room and board, spending money, everything. He failed more than half his classes and quit. Their response? Tell him it was okay, and that they'd support whatever he decided to do next. I'd paid for my entire education myself, graduated debt-free with honors, and got an Amazon gift card. Nathan blew through 35 grand in party money and got told he was brave for trying something new. After graduation, I landed a decent job as a junior accountant at a mid-sized firm. The pay was solid, nothing crazy, but enough to start building a real life. I lived with 2 roommates in a cramped apartment for 2 years, saving every dollar I could. No eating out, no subscriptions I didn't need, packed lunch every single day. I was laser focused on one goal: getting my own place where I'd never have to deal with my family's dysfunction again. During those 2 years, Nathan bounced between part-time jobs, worked at a retail store for 3 months before quitting because his manager was too strict. Tried being a personal trainer for like 6 weeks before deciding that waking up early wasn't his thing. Delivered food for a month before his car broke down and he decided the job wasn't worth the hassle. Every time he quit, my parents welcomed him home with open arms and zero expectations that he'd contribute anything. Meanwhile, I kept grinding. No vacations, no new car, nothing flashy. Just work, save, repeat. My coworkers would invite me out for happy hour and I'd decline because those $8 drinks add up. They thought I was boring. I thought I was motivated. Finally, 3 years ago, I had enough saved up. Found a 1-bedroom apartment in a decent area, nothing fancy, but it was mine. Signed the lease, moved in with the bare minimum furniture, and felt like I'd won the lottery. No more family drama, no more double standards, no more walking on eggshells. Just peace and quiet in my own space. The first night in my apartment, I ordered pizza and sat on my cheap couch in my empty living room and just appreciated the silence. No parents arguing about money, no Nathan playing video games at max volume at 2 a.m., no tension. Just me and my mediocre pepperoni pizza in glorious solitude. I kept minimal contact with my family after moving out. Showed up for major holidays because completely cutting them off felt too extreme, but I stopped going to every random family dinner or event. My parents acted hurt, but honestly, my mental health improved drastically. I wasn't constantly comparing myself to Nathan or feeling like I'd never be good enough. I was just existing on my own terms. Work was going well. I'd gotten 2 raises in 3 years, was handling bigger accounts, and my boss mentioned I was on track for a promotion. Nothing explosive, just steady career growth built on showing up and doing good work. I was finally building the stable, drama-free life I'd always wanted. Then, about 4 months ago, Nathan showed up at my apartment unannounced on a Tuesday night. I opened the door, and there he was, standing in my hallway with 2 duffel bags and his gaming PC in a box. No warning, no heads up, just appeared like a bad surprise party. "Hey man, can I crash here for a bit?" he said, already trying to push past me with his bags. I blocked the doorway. "What? No, what are you talking about?" Apparently, our parents had finally reached their limit. Nathan had been living at home rent-free for 25 years, contributing nothing, and spending his days gaming and working random part-time jobs that he'd quit after a few weeks. My dad had gotten fed up and told Nathan he had 1 month to either start paying $400 monthly rent or find somewhere else to live. Nathan naturally did neither. Just kept living there rent-free, assuming Dad was bluffing. Spoiler alert, Dad wasn't bluffing. They'd had a massive argument that morning, and my parents told Nathan he needed to leave. So his brilliant solution was to show up at my place, expecting me to just take him in. "Come on, bro. It'll be like old times," he said. Like our childhood was some nostalgic bonding experience, instead of me getting the short end of every stick while he coasted through life. "No," I said flatly. "You can't stay here." His face went from friendly to confused to annoyed in about 3 seconds. "Are you serious right now? I'm your brother." "Yeah, and this is my apartment that I worked my tail off to afford. You're not moving in." He tried every angle. It would only be temporary. He'd get a job and start contributing. He'd be super quiet, and I wouldn't even notice he was there. He'd help with chores. On and on. Every promise sounded exactly like the countless other promises he'd made and broken throughout his entire life. I stood firm. "Nathan, you need to figure this out yourself. I'm not your backup plan. So you're just going to let me be homeless? Real nice, bro. You're not homeless. You have options. You can find roommates, get a full-time job, rent a room somewhere. You're 25 years old. Figure it out like the rest of us had to." He stood there for a minute, clearly expecting me to cave. When I didn't, he picked up his bags and left without another word. I closed the door, locked it, and felt absolutely zero guilt. I'd worked too hard for my peace to let it get disrupted by someone who'd never faced a real consequence in his life. I should have known that wouldn't be the end of it. The next day, my mom called. I let it go to voicemail. She called 3 more times. Then my dad called. More voicemails. Then Nathan. Then my mom again. I turned my phone on silent and went about my day. That night, I finally listened to the messages. My mom's were all variations of, how could you do this to your brother? And family helps family. And I raised you better than this. My dad's were more direct. Call me back right now. We need to talk about Nathan. Nathan's message was just him saying I was a selfish jerk and that he'd remember this. I didn't call any of them back. Over the next week, the calls and texts kept coming. My mom tried guilt trips. My dad tried authority. Nathan tried both. I ignored all of it. The messages were relentless. My mom would call crying about abandoning family. My dad left voicemails using his authority voice, demanding I call back immediately. Nathan's texts ranged from desperate to angry, first begging, then accusing me of being a terrible brother. One night around 2 a.m., Nathan called 11 times in a row. The voicemail he left was him rambling about how he couldn't believe his own brother would do this to him, how he'd always looked up to me. Pure manipulation. We'd never been close. My mom's texts were masterclasses in guilt. Your brother is sleeping on a friend's couch because of you. I hope you can live with yourself knowing your family is suffering. This isn't how we raised you. Then my aunt got involved. Then my grandmother. Apparently, this had become a full family crisis. My aunt said she couldn't believe I'd turned my back on Nathan. My grandmother said I was being cruel and that she was praying for me. Here's the thing, though. Not a single one of them offered to let Nathan stay with them. My aunt had a spare bedroom. My grandmother had an entire basement apartment. But no, I was the designated savior because I'd successfully gotten my life together. My mom even tried to coordinate a surprise visit to my apartment with my aunt. I saw them through the peephole one evening, both standing in my hallway. I didn't answer. I stood there silently as they knocked for 5 minutes. Finally, I said through the door, I can see you. I'm not opening this door. Please leave. My aunt tried reasoning with me. Honey, we just want to talk. We're family. There's nothing to sort out. Nathan needs to find his own place. Goodbye. They stood there for another 10 minutes. I put on headphones and let them waste their time. I sent one group text to everyone. Nathan is 25. He can get a job and find his own place like every other adult. I'm not discussing this further. Then I muted the group chat and went back to my peaceful existence. The response was immediate. My phone buzzed nonstop for an hour. Everything from "you're heartless" to "we'll remember this." I didn't read most of them. My mom sent a message saying I'd changed since moving out, that my fancy apartment and job had made me cold and selfish. The irony was almost funny. I hadn't changed. I'd just stopped accepting unequal treatment, and suddenly that made me the villain. For about 2 weeks, things went quiet. I figured they'd given up and Nathan had found somewhere to crash. I was wrong. One Thursday evening, I was leaving work around 6 p.m. It had been a long day, I was tired, and I was looking forward to going home, making some pasta, and watching mindless shows. I walked out of my office building into the parking lot, heading toward my car. That's when I saw my dad's truck parked right next to my car. He was leaning against his driver's door, arms crossed, staring directly at me. My stomach dropped immediately. This wasn't a coincidental run-in. He'd come here specifically, probably been waiting for who knows how long. I thought about turning around and going back inside, but that felt cowardly. I was 28 years old. I could handle a conversation with my father, so I kept walking. We need to talk, he said as I approached. I'm heading home, Dad. If you want to talk, you can call me. I've been calling you. You don't answer. Because there's nothing to discuss. I already gave you my answer about Nathan. His jaw clenched. Get in my truck, now. No, I'm going home. I tried to move past him toward my car, but he stepped in front of me, blocking my path. We were in a pretty empty section of the parking lot. Most people had left already. There were a few cars scattered around, but no one nearby. You're going to listen to me, he said, his voice dropping low. Nathan is your brother. You're going to let him stay with you until he gets on his feet. No, I'm not. This isn't a request. I'm an adult with my own place. You don't get to make demands about what I do with it. That's when his demeanor shifted. The frustrated dad act dropped, and something harder took its place. You think you're so much better than the rest of us, don't you? Got your fancy apartment, your accounting job, acting like you're too good to help family? This isn't about being better than anyone. This is about boundaries. Boundaries, he repeated, almost laughing. You want to talk about boundaries? How about the boundary of not abandoning your brother when he needs help? He doesn't need help. He needs consequences. There's a difference. Wrong thing to say. I saw it in his eyes the second the words left my mouth. You ungrateful piece of work, he said, stepping closer. After everything we did for you growing up, fed you, housed you, paid for your school, I paid for my own school. And you charged me rent while letting Nathan live free. Because Nathan needed support. You were always fine on your own. So I get punished for being responsible? You're not being punished, you're being asked to help family. But apparently you're too selfish to understand that. I'm done with this conversation, I said, trying to step around him again. He grabbed my arm. Hard. We're not done. Let go of me. Not until you agree to help your brother. I pulled my arm away, and he grabbed my shirt instead, yanking me back. Dad, let go. You will do as I say, or you're dead to this family. Do you understand me? Before I could respond, he shoved me backward. I stumbled but caught myself. This wasn't happening. This couldn't actually be happening. My own father, in my work parking lot, getting physical with me because I wouldn't let his favorite son crash at my apartment. You've got until tomorrow to call Nathan and tell him he can move in, Dad said. Otherwise, don't bother showing up to any family events ever again. You won't be welcome. Fine by me, I said, my voice shaking but steady. If that's how it is, then we're done. That's when he hit me. I didn't even see it coming. He threw a punch that caught me right in the side of my face, near my ear. The impact knocked me sideways, and I went down hard on the asphalt. My glasses flew off and skidded under a nearby car. Pain exploded through my skull, and I tasted blood. I was on the ground, disoriented, and he was standing over me, breathing hard. Get up. I didn't move. Couldn't really. My head was ringing, and I was trying to process that my father had just punched me in a parking lot, like some bar fight. I said, get up. He reached down and grabbed my collar, hauling me partway up before shoving me back down. My hand scraped against the rough parking lot surface. You think you can disrespect this family? Disrespect me? He kicked me in the ribs. Not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough that I felt it through my whole torso. I curled up instinctively, trying to protect myself. You're going to help your brother, he said, standing over me. Because that's what family does. And if you don't, then you're not part of this family anymore. Got it? I didn't say anything. I was still on the ground. Everything hurt, and I was running through my options. Fighting back would just escalate things. Trying to run would be pointless. So I just stayed down. After a few seconds, he seemed to realize what he'd done. His posture changed, got less aggressive. Look, Nathan needs this. He's your brother. Stop being stubborn and just do the right thing. Then he walked back to his truck, got in, and drove away. Left me lying in the parking lot bleeding. I stayed there for a minute, maybe two, just breathing and taking inventory. My face hurt where he'd punched me. My ribs ached from the kick. My hands were scraped up from the asphalt. But nothing felt broken. I was just bruised and bleeding and absolutely furious. Slowly I got to my feet, found my glasses, thankfully not broken, and put them back on. Checked my reflection in my car window. I had a cut on my cheek that was bleeding pretty good, and I could already feel swelling starting along my jaw. My work shirt was torn at the collar and had bloodstains on it. I got in my car and just sat there for a while. My hands were shaking. I kept replaying what just happened. My father, the man who was supposed to protect me, had just beaten me in a parking lot because I wouldn't enable my deadbeat brother. Then something clicked in my brain. A weird calm came over me. I pulled out my phone and called 911. The operator answered and I said very clearly, I need to report an assault. My father just attacked me in a parking lot. I gave them all the information. My location, my name, my father's name and description, his license plate number, everything. The operator said they were sending officers and asked if I needed an ambulance. I said no. I could drive myself to the hospital if needed, but I wanted to file a police report. 2 police cars showed up within 10 minutes. I gave my statement to the officers, showed them my injuries, told them exactly what happened, that I'd refused to let my brother move in with me. My father had confronted me at my workplace, physically prevented me from leaving, and then assaulted me when I refused to change my mind. One officer took photos of my face, my scraped hands, and the rip in my shirt. The other one took down all the details. My father's information, the timeline of events, the threats he'd made. They asked if there were any security cameras. There were. My office building had cameras covering the parking lot. Do you want to press charges? One officer asked. Absolutely. They seemed a bit surprised. Apparently, family assault cases usually result in people backing down or trying to handle it privately. But I was crystal clear. I want to press full charges, assault and battery. I want this documented and prosecuted. The officers said they'd contact my father and likely arrest him. They asked if I felt safe going home or if I needed to stay somewhere else. I said I'd be fine. My father didn't know where I lived. I'd never given him my new address after moving. After they left, I sat in my car and called my workplace security, explained what had happened, and asked for the parking lot footage from that evening. They said they'd save it and provide it to the police upon request. Then I drove myself to an urgent care clinic got checked out, and documented every injury. The doctor noted the facial contusion, the rib bruising, the scraped hands. Everything got photographed and written up in a medical report. By the time I got home, it was almost 11 p.m. I was exhausted, in pain, and emotionally drained. But I also felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. For years, I'd been the family punching bag, metaphorically speaking. Tonight, it had become literal. And I'd finally drawn a line in the sand that couldn't be uncrossed. I texted my boss explaining I'd been in an incident and would need the next day off. He immediately called me, concerned. I gave him the basic story. Family dispute that got physical, police were involved, I had medical documentation. He told me to take whatever time I needed and that HR would be looped in since it happened in the company parking lot. Then I silenced my phone and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up to 47 missed calls and probably 100 plus text messages. I didn't read any of them. I made coffee, took some pain medication, and waited. The messages ranged from disbelief to fury. My mom had left 6 voicemails, each one more hysterical than the last. The first one was confused. Why are the police here? What did you tell them? Call me right now. By the 6th one, she was screaming into the phone about how I was destroying our family and that I'd better fix this immediately. Nathan's messages were predictably self-centered. Dude, what the heck? Dad's getting arrested because you can't take a joke? And, way to overreact, bro. Now everyone's mad at me because of your drama. Not once did he seem to grasp that maybe our dad beating me in a parking lot was the actual problem, not my response to it. My aunt texted saying she was shocked and appalled at my actions, that family doesn't call the police on family, and that I should be ashamed. My grandmother sent a message saying she was praying for me because I'd clearly lost my way. Various cousins chimed in with their opinions, most of them negative. Around 10 a.m., 2 police officers showed up at my door. They informed me that they'd gone to arrest my father that morning. He was being charged with assault and battery. He'd been taken into custody, processed, and was being held pending a bail hearing. The officers told me the arrest hadn't gone smoothly. My father had apparently tried to argue that this was all a misunderstanding, that I was being dramatic, that families have disagreements, and this didn't need to involve police. My mom had been there during the arrest, hysterical and screaming at the officers that they were destroying their family over nothing. The officers asked if I wanted a restraining order. I said yes. They helped me file the paperwork right there. Within hours, my father had a temporary restraining order requiring him to stay at least 500 feet away from me, my home, and my workplace. That's when my phone really exploded. My mom called 15 times in a row. My aunt, my grandmother, Nathan, even some cousins I barely talked to. Everyone had opinions about what I'd done. I finally answered my mom's call. She was hysterical, screaming about how I'd had my father arrested. How could I do this to the family? Didn't I understand this would ruin his life? He could lose his job, etc. He assaulted me, Mom, I said calmly. In a parking lot, because I wouldn't let Nathan move in with me. It wasn't that serious. You're blowing this out of proportion. He punched me in the face and kicked me while I was on the ground. You must have provoked him. Your father wouldn't just attack you for no reason. And there it was. Even with me beaten and bloodied, I was still somehow at fault in her eyes. Her golden child system couldn't allow for the possibility that maybe, just maybe, Dad had screwed up. I have medical records, police reports, and security camera footage. This isn't up for debate. If you testify against him, if you go through with this, you're not my son anymore. Do you hear me? You will be dead to this family. Okay, I said, and hung up. She called back immediately. I blocked her number. Then I blocked my dad's number, Nathan's number, and my aunt's number. Anyone who had anything to say about my decision got blocked. Within an hour, I'd cut off about 15 family members. The peace was immediate and glorious. Over the next few days, I learned through some cousins who hadn't harassed me that my family was having a complete meltdown. My father had been released on bail, but was facing criminal charges. The restraining order meant he couldn't come to family gatherings if I was there. My mom was telling everyone I'd destroyed the family over nothing. Nathan was living with my aunt now, and apparently complaining about her rules. She was making him pay $300 monthly rent and help with chores. My grandmother tried to organize some kind of intervention. She called my work phone, which I'd forgotten to block, and left a message about how disappointed she was in me, how I was tearing the family apart, and how I needed to drop the charges immediately and let bygones be bygones. She actually said that. Let bygones be bygones. Like my father's fists hitting my face were just some minor social faux pas that we should all forget about. I saved that voicemail, added it to my documentation file. Because here's what my family didn't understand. This wasn't about Nathan's housing situation anymore. This was about the fact that my father had physically assaulted me for setting a boundary. If I dropped the charges and let this slide, the message would be clear. They could do whatever they wanted to me, and I'd just take it. My extended family started picking sides. Some relatives I barely knew started posting vague social media updates about fake family members and people who turn their backs when things get hard. I didn't respond to any of it, didn't engage, just let them be mad in their own spaces. A few cousins reached out privately with support. One sent me a long message about how she dealt with similar favoritism growing up with her siblings and how proud she was of me for standing my ground. Another cousin said he'd always thought my parents treated Nathan differently and that he wasn't surprised this had finally blown up. Their support helped, but it didn't change my resolve. I was doing this regardless of who supported me or didn't. The legal process moved forward. My father got a lawyer who tried to paint this as a family dispute that had gotten out of hand. My lawyer presented the parking lot security footage, the medical reports, my statement, and the testimony of a coworker who'd seen part of the incident through an office window. My family ramped up their harassment campaign. Since I'd blocked most of them, they got creative. My mom mailed an 8-page handwritten letter to my apartment detailing all the ways I was destroying our family. Not once did she mention that maybe my father shouldn't have beaten me. My aunt somehow got my workplace number and called asking to speak with me. When the receptionist said I wasn't available, she launched into a speech about how I'd done something terrible. HR had to send out a memo about not giving out employee information. One cousin even showed up at my office building lobby. I kept walking to the elevator while she followed me talking about family loyalty. Building security escorted her out. The footage was damning. Crystal clear video of my father grabbing me, shoving me, punching me, kicking me while I was down. His lawyer tried to argue about provocation, but the prosecutor shut that down fast. There's no legal justification for beating your adult son in a parking lot. About 3 weeks later, my father's lawyer offered a plea deal. If I dropped the charges, my father would plead to a lesser charge, do community service, and maintain the restraining order for 1 year. I rejected it immediately. He can plead guilty to assault and battery, or we go to trial. Those are the options. My family lost it when they heard I'd refused the deal. My mom left a message with my lawyer's office begging me to reconsider. My grandmother sent me a registered letter filled with biblical quotes about forgiveness. My aunt showed up at my apartment again with Nathan. I watched through my peephole as they stood there for 20 minutes. I called building security and had them both removed. With each person who tried to defend what my father did or minimize it, my resolve only got stronger. It wasn't that bad, and family forgives just confirmed I was doing the right thing. The case went to trial. Pretty straightforward. The prosecutor presented evidence. My father's lawyer did their best with an unwinnable case. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. The trial lasted 2 days. The parking lot footage was played for the jury. Several jurors physically reacted when my father punched me and I went down. One woman gasped. The video showed everything clearly. My testimony took most of day 2. I kept my voice steady and factual. Just a clear recounting of what happened. My father's lawyer tried to trip me up during cross-examination with questions about my relationship with my brother and whether I resented my parents. I answered each question calmly. Guilty on all counts. My father was sentenced to 6 months in county jail with the possibility of work release, plus 2 years probation, anger management classes, and the restraining order was extended to 5 years. He'd also have an assault conviction on his record permanently. The day of sentencing, I wasn't allowed in the courtroom because of the restraining order, but my lawyer called me right after with the verdict. I sat in my apartment, in the space I'd worked so hard for, and felt absolutely nothing but satisfaction. The family fallout was nuclear. My mother publicly disowned me on social media, posted this long rant about how I'd destroyed our family over pride and selfishness, how I'd sent my father to jail over a minor disagreement, and how she was ashamed to call me her son. Several relatives commented agreeing with her. I screenshot all of it, saved it, never responded to a single word. Nathan tried one last time to reach out through a friend of a friend, sent me a message saying that he'd moved in with our aunt, had gotten a job at a warehouse, and was trying to get his life together. He said he hoped I was happy with what I'd done, and that eventually I'd regret destroying our family over my ego. I blocked that person too. 2 months after the sentencing, I heard through one of my neutral cousins that things were falling apart. My dad lost his job. The assault conviction meant he couldn't pass the background check for the renewal of his security clearance. My mom had to pick up extra shifts to cover their mortgage. Nathan got fired from the warehouse job after 3 weeks for showing up late repeatedly and was back to living rent-free with my aunt, who was apparently at her breaking point. 3 months in, my aunt called my work phone, the one number she had that I hadn't blocked, left a message saying Nathan had overstayed his welcome, that she couldn't afford to support him anymore, and asking if I'd reconsider. I deleted the voicemail without finishing it. 4 months after the trial, I got promoted to senior accountant. Came with a 20% raise and my own office. My boss pulled me aside and said the company appreciated my professionalism during that difficult personal situation and that I'd handled it with impressive maturity. Around the same time, I started dating someone I'd met at a work conference. Her name's Jennifer. On our third date, I gave her the basic rundown of what happened with my family. Her response? Good for you for protecting yourself. Anyone who defends violence isn't worth keeping around. We've been together for about 6 months now. She's never once suggested I should reconcile with my family or give them another chance. She just respects that I made a decision and stuck with it. 6 months post-trial, my grandmother passed away. Natural causes, nothing dramatic. I found out through Facebook. Didn't go to the funeral. My mom posted about how some family members chose not to honor her memory, and several people commented asking who would skip their own grandmother's funeral. A cousin I was still in contact with told me that my mom had a breakdown at the funeral, crying about how her family was destroyed and how I'd torn everyone apart. My dad apparently sat in the back looking miserable, still dealing with being unemployed. Nathan showed up late and left early. I sent flowers to the funeral home with a card that just said, "Sorry for your loss." That was it. No attendance, no drama, no explanation. 8 months in, Nathan got arrested for driving on a suspended license. Apparently, he'd racked up a bunch of unpaid traffic tickets and his license had been suspended for months, but he kept driving anyway. My aunt bailed him out, then kicked him out of her house the next day. He ended up moving back in with my parents. I learned all this through my cousin, who'd been keeping me updated. She said my parents' house was a nightmare. My dad depressed and angry about losing his job, my mom exhausted from working double shifts, and Nathan back in his childhood room gaming all day, like nothing had changed. Around the 1-year anniversary of the assault, I got a letter from my father. It went to my lawyer first, who reviewed it and forwarded it to me. 3 pages of mostly justifications. He was sorry things got out of hand, but I needed to understand his perspective. He'd been under stress. He'd been frustrated. He never meant for things to escalate. He'd completed anger management and learned better coping strategies. He hoped eventually we could reconcile. Not once in 3 pages did he actually say, "I was wrong to hit you." I filed it away with the rest of the documentation and never responded. Last month, I bought a house. Small 3-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood about 30 minutes from my office. Jennifer helped me pick it out. We're not moving in together yet, taking things slow, but she's got her own key and stays over most weekends. The day I closed on the house, I was sitting on the back deck with a drink, looking at my yard, and my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered it. It was Nathan. "How'd you get this number?" I asked. "Doesn't matter. Look, I wanted to say I'm sorry, okay? For everything. For showing up at your place expecting you to take me in. For not standing up for you when we were kids. For all of it." I didn't say anything. Dad's been a mess since the trial. Mom's working herself to death. The family's falling apart. And I know it's my fault. If I'd just gotten my act together years ago, none of this would have happened. "You're right," I said. "It wouldn't have. So, is there any chance we could talk? Maybe grab coffee or something?" "No. Come on, man. I'm trying here. I'm actually working a real job now. Paying my own rent, doing the whole responsible adult thing. Doesn't that count for something? Good for you. That's what you should have been doing for the past 7 years. So that's it? You're just done with all of us forever? Nathan, Dad beat me in a parking lot because I wouldn't let you crash at my place. Mom defended him. You sent me messages calling me selfish. The entire family harassed me for pressing charges. Why would I want any of you back in my life?" He was quiet for a minute. I guess I just thought, I don't know. Family's supposed to forgive, right? Family's also not supposed to assault each other. Seems like we're both dealing with disappointment. I hung up, blocked the number, went back to enjoying my deck. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.